and welcome to What a Scream, the horror movie podcast where I, your host, Ogali Miss Dolly, chats with a special guest every week about horror films. And in particular, we talk about two films or more, as in the case of this episode, that have to do with a certain theme or subject I've previously randomly picked previous to recording. So this week, my special guest is a friend of the podcast, podcast regular, Ruby Noir. And we kind of have this series going of kind of kitsch and campy horror themes. So this week, our theme is all about childhood horror or children's horror. So that is movies that are kind of catered and kind of advertised more towards children. But when you watch them, they are absolutely terrifying. And how that managed to get like a child's rating, who knows? However, we kind of look at these movies as almost the gateway drugs into more hardcore horror. If you can just hear that, that is my child. And he's a demon spawn. He is already his own brand of horror. Anyway. So yes, these films are kind of like the beginnings of a lot of people's horror journey. So we are discussing this week, we're actually discussing three films because of a lack of communication on our behalves. But we are chatting about 1985's Return to Oz, 1993's Hocus Pocus, and 2009's Coraline. So it's a bumper-packed episode this week. So yeah, here is my chat with Ruby Noir about childhood horror.
I would like to welcome back to the podcast, friend of the podcast, Ruby Noir. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Official friend of the pod.
Official friend of the pod.
Oh, how kind of you. I'm delighted to be back. Regular contributor. It's on my CV now.
It better be on your LinkedIn.
I am good. Thank you so much for having me back. How are you?
I'm good. I tried to soak up the sun, but like yourself, I've been suffering with migraines, so I'm like,
no.
The light.
It's the pair of us with light-sensitive migraines on the most stunning day of the year, and it's Ireland, so it's going to start raining tomorrow, and it won't stop until July 2022.
Yes.
But unfortunately, yeah, have not been able to enjoy it as much as I would like to, but that's okay.
No, I sat in a dark room listening to murder.
And I sat in a dark room pretending to farm, playing Stardew Valley to pass the time. I have chickens named after the Golden Girls, and they're my pride and joy.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
This is my life at the moment. Work and digital chickens.
Way. So what have you been watching? Have you been watching any good horror recently? Apart from what we're going to talk about, obviously.
Apart from what we're going to talk about, I've been very bad. I have been on holidays, and holidays generally is a break from screens and stuff for me, because we go down to the middle of the country where there's nothing. But recently I did a rewatch Jennifer's Body, which I thoroughly enjoyed again, and I found out in a callback to our last episode together that there is an unofficial Jennifer's Body musical.
No.
Yes.
No.
No, it's unofficial.
Amazing.
It's not. It's but I can totally see that. Just Fall Out Boy from top to bottom.
Yes. Yes, that would be, if we could get Fall Out Boy to mix with Jennifer's Body. That would be amazing. And then I would love to A, see that musical, B, be a part of that musical.
I think if you were writing a Jennifer's Body musical, though, it would absolutely have to be that like early noughties pop punk.
Absolutely.
Yes. And obviously all the low shoulder stuff. If Absolutely. They could, they'd have to have that, but
yes. Let's do it. We should put it on.
We should put it on. It's unofficial. We don't need to check with anyone.
Exactly. Let's do it. This is far too much for two people that can't even go out in the sunshine.
I know. Which one of us gets to be Megan Fox?
We can understudy for each other. You do one night, I do the next night.
Oh my god, yeah, like when Johnny Lee Miller and Benedict Cumberbatch did Frankenstein.
Yes,
it'd be amazing.
Exactly. Except no one would be able to tell us apart.
No, they'd be like, oh, I saw the same thing twice. What a rip-off.
That would be amazing. I actually, to hark back to our last episode, I saw a short film that was a musical, and I have to say, I want the long version. It's possibly one of the only like horror musicals that I'm like, I need this in my life. It's about a taxidermist, and she's very lonely, but she wants her pinnacle piece of art to be a person.
And so it's a musical?
And it's a musical, and it's so good. It's so bleak and so like...
If ever there was a piece of media that was made for me, that sounds incredible. Right. What's it called?
That is a good question.
You can just cut that section out. I never asked.
I'll soundbite it in.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. It's part of the Northbound Film Festival. Oh my god, what is wrong with me today?
Migraine brain.
Migraine. So yes, it was brilliant, and I would definitely forward you on the name of it.
Yeah, fab. I definitely want to check that out. I have been, because someone on Twitter pointed out that their favorite part of the last episode we did together was me just listing off ridiculous horror musicals and you going, what? Really? No. So I've been on the lookout for really niche horror musicals just for you.
Just for me? Oh
yeah.
My god. I would like to delve into the world of like live horror musicals. I don't think I could watch them online. I need to actually...
Yeah, that's that is the more exciting thing, I think, because it's so hard. We're going back into the same conversations that we had last time. It's so hard to do horror on stage, and then you throw music in on top of it, and it's like, what's going to happen? Who knows? But yeah, I would be very up for that as well. I don't know. You never know what might come out on the indie theater scene off Broadway.
So far off Broadway, it's in another country.
Yeah, once things are back up and running.
Yeah. Absolutely. So this time around, we took up the mantle of children's horror, aka horror that may not be marketed as horror, and it's marketed towards children, but when you actually look at it, it's fucking terrifying.
Yeah, all those films that get brought up in conversations about childhood trauma.
Yeah, absolutely. So what was the film that gave you your childhood trauma?
Oh God, what was the film that gave me my childhood trauma? Actually, do you know what my OG childhood trauma was? The original Wizard of Oz. Yeah, I was very scared of the Wicked Witch of the West.
Yeah, she is very, and especially when you see it in like full Technicolor, you're like, holy shit.
Yeah, it was the first film I owned personally on VHS. It was given to me for my 3rd birthday by my aunt and uncle.
And that's why you are the way you are today.
Yeah, it explains a lot, really. The other thing I would say is the first film I ever saw in the cinema around the same time was actually Beauty and the Beast, and that scene where he's up in the tower when she finds the rose. Fucking horrifying. I was so scared. Yeah. And I remember being like 5 years old and actually watching that scene through and not like hiding behind the sofa and being so proud of myself.
Oh, I feel like Disney has a lot to answer for.
Disney does. Some of that shit is scary.
Yeah. For me, it was Edward Scissorhands. Yeah.
I think I watched that when I was a bit too old to find it scary, and it was just sort of sad and pretty.
I think I was only about 4 or 5 when I saw it. And yeah, it's just and there's a particular scene that really terrified me, and it was where he comes into the house and they've got a waterbed and he gets his like finger and he sticks it in, and for some reason that had me jumping behind the sofa.
Yes, yeah, I can definitely see that. And then, and we've discussed, I think, on my first episode, you asked me what one of my favorite horror movies was, and I think I said Nightmare Before Christmas was one of them, and that's definitely up there. And again, that wouldn't be trauma, but it's definitely like where I was like, hey, I like this stuff.
And what do you think of, now there's been a lot of thing on Twitter recently about whether horror is for kids. What do you think of introducing darker things to kids in obviously age appropriate ways, but do you think it's a good thing to do, or do you think they should be shielded?
Oh, I think it's a very good thing to do. I mean, horror often is allegory for very real things. And the idea of shielding kids from those things completely I don't think is particularly healthy. like I would be very much, and particularly when it comes to things like death, I think it's important to give kids access to those concepts early on, so it's not so scary for them.
Yeah.
Because if you just kind of hide them away and bubble wrap them, then when something real happens, they don't have the tools to deal with it.
Yeah, that's absolute. Yeah.
Yeah. So that would be kind of my take on it. And also, horror is really fun as well. So it's just mean.
Yeah, I have this like, because I was kind of introduced to like the gothic side of children's horror. So that's, a lot of Tim Burton. Roald Dahl as well is...
Roald Dahl, real scary.
It's real scary. And then especially like the witches. And I remember James and the Giant Peach, the film as well, with the great big rhinoceros and,
Yeah, that was so good. Yeah.
But I have this thing about Nate, because I'm like, okay, he's seen Nightmare Before Christmas. He loves Nightmare Before Christmas. And I'm like, but what age do I start, introducing him? He knows all the spooky stuff. Like, he knows Frankenstein and Dracula. He knows, if he sees a picture, he's like, that's Frankenstein's monster, or that's Dracula.
Well, he lives in a house with you. So, I mean, he'd pick it up by osmosis if nothing else. You might not understand the context, but...
But I'm like, at what age do I be like, okay, this is, not a horror film, but let's say I'll introduce him to the Universal classics, or, like what age? Because I've heard so many people being like, oh, I saw The Exorcist at 6, and I'm like...
Yeah. I did not see The Exorcist at 6, but I saw other inappropriate things at that age. Yeah, it's kind of hard. I think, kids, like the minute that they're able to access media themselves, they'll seek out what they like. So I think, I know, speaking as the non-parent of the two of us, like where possible, I suppose, like if kids can guide you and like they'll tell you what they want to watch, and then you can make a call as is best to your ability on whether you think that thing is appropriate.
Yeah.
Because, like I saw something like, and this is not scary, but we discussed it the last time, something like Rocky Horror Picture Show, way too young. Yeah. No, I shouldn't have watched it, not because it was too scary, but because of various things. No, it didn't harm me at the end of the day, but yeah. I wouldn't show a 5-year-old that movie.
Sit down, it's time for some education.
Yeah, it's the new form of sex ed. Yeah, I don't know. It's a tricky question. I think, and everyone has their own line, because obviously different things scare different kids as well. So what might be very scary for one child is fine for another one. So
yeah,
and I'm assuming that your son is going to be very au fait with all things horror.
See, it's kind of weird because he's very like, I have a lot of collection of horror dolls and monster dolls, and he's played with them since he was a child. He's always around like ghosty stuff and spooky witchy stuff. There's one film that petrifies him, and he will not watch it, and that is Secret Life of Pets.
I knew it was going to be something that was like Paw Patrol movie.
And it's because he doesn't like, the really big dog, and the really big dog barks at the alley cats, and Nate loves cats, and he was in bits after that. He was like, yeah, that naughty dog, take it away. So we can't watch Secret Life of Pets.
That is understandable. Yeah, I mean, I suppose because he's been raised with a lot of this imagery, what is scary to another child is entirely normal to him in some ways. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, though. Like, it's all what it is. Like,
yeah, we'll see how he turns out in about 20 years.
He'll be fine. He'll be fine.
You know what? If he turns into like the best horror director, that Ireland has ever seen, that'd be great.
Yeah. Like, it's all me, really.
Yeah. It's me. So let's start off with one of the films. Well, so we had a bit of a mix-up.
We did
this week. I thought we were doing Return to Oz and Coraline, but I do have a faint memory of us mentioning Hocus Pocus.
Yes, and then I thought we were doing Return to Oz and Hocus Pocus. So I have not watched Coraline, and I haven't seen it for years. I've only watched it the once.
Yes.
So I'm not prepared to discuss it, unfortunately.
But because I have seen Hocus Pocus 1,000,000,001 times.
Who hasn't?
Exactly. So I'm very comfortable chatting about Hocus Pocus. So I'm going to start off with Return to Oz. So Return to Oz is a 1985 British-American dark fantasy film released by Walt Disney, directed and written by Walter Murch, co-written by Jill Dennis. It stars Nicole Williamson, Jean Marsh, Piper Laurie, and Fairuza Balk as Dorothy Gale in her first screen role.
Her first film role, I think. I think she'd done TV beforehand, but yeah, she was only 10.
Oh, baby.
Yeah.
Yes, and it is an unofficial sequel of the 1939 Wizard of Oz.
Yes.
And it follows Dorothy as she is now back home in Kansas, and basically her aunt thinks she is going a bit round the twist because she keeps talking about Oz, and possibly in the most horrific bit of the film. I mean, there's a lot of horrific bits in this film, but
I agree. This is definitely the scariest bit.
Right? Her aunt takes her to get electroshock therapy in an institution as a feckin' 10-year-old girl. And from there, she is thrown back into Oz, but things have changed. So yeah, this film, I remember watching it as a child, and I remember being terrified of the Wheelers.
Oh, the Wheelers are so scary. The movement on that is really amazing. Like, it is award-winning. It should have been award-winning. Like, it's so well done. But anyway.
Yeah, so the Wheelers are creatures that work for Mombi. And they have wheels as limbs.
Yeah.
And I can't get it out of my head. I watched it last night and I'm still like, oh.
Yeah, I watched it last night as well. Did you also have horrible migraine moments with all the flashing towards the end?
Yes.
Anyway, but no, they are amazing because they have they only have one wheel on the end of each limb. So it's guys who were going around basically on all fours, but like with their arms and legs fully extended. Then they have these hats that have faces on the tops of their heads so that when their heads are down so they can see where the fuck they're going, it looks like they have a face. It is an incredible creature design.
Yes.
Or concept, I suppose. Not really a creature design. Yeah. But then they're also wearing these like tailcoats that have this mad like 1980s psychedelic thing going, which is so weird.
Yeah, so we kind of come across these and we find out that the world of Oz has been turned to stone and kind of been destroyed. And then we've got this queen, Mombi, who, another fucking terrifying thing is that she can remove her head and decide which head she's going to wear.
Yeah. And she's got this hallway. This is the bit that really has stuck with me my entire life. This hallway, mirrored hallway of all these glass cabinets with her 31 heads in them.
Yeah.
And it is, watching it back now, because I actually hadn't watched it probably since I was a teenager. And watching it back now, it's really obvious how they did it, but it's still so effective.
Yeah.
It's so weird. It's so creepy. Yes.
And then there's another baddie who is the Stone King.
The Gnome King.
There we go. And he has kind of taken over Oz and they must kind of battle him, but do a battle of riddles and wits for him to be destroyed and for Oz to return to its former glory. So yeah, it's just as dark and fantastical as the first Wizard of Oz, but it's just that much creepier.
It's freaking terrifying.
And it's like this is on the Disney Plus channel.
Yeah.
Like, this is a Disney film, but yet the opening thing is, as we said, was the terrifying thing is where her aunt is sending her to an institution to have electroshock therapy.
Yeah, it's so scary. But the actor who plays the Doctor, and he also plays the Gnome King, Nicole Williamson, like, he is so good at being so like seemingly caring but also terrifying at the same time. And that is the bit that is genuinely scary. Like, there's a lot of very disturbing things. Imagery mostly in Oz. The Wheelers, Mombi. There's a scene where a bunch of the Wheelers fall into the deadly desert and they all turn to sand, and it's actually really well done. I'd forgotten. I was like, this is fucking cool. But yeah, just the basic premise of how Dorothy ends up back in Oz. It's so fucked up.
And like, you wouldn't understand that as a child. I mean, I didn't understand it as a child.
No, neither did I. I didn't really understand, especially because of the way that they kind of do it with that weird headphone kind of thing setup. I was not quite sure, but I did know it was something bad.
Yes. Yeah. But like when you look back as an adult, and obviously we know about the past of, institutions like this, it's kind of like, this is terrifying for a kid's film. Like, why would you put this in a kid's film?
Yeah, it's really scary. But I suppose the good thing is A, she doesn't get electroshock therapy, and B, it's proven that she's not mad, that Oz was in fact real.
Yes.
In this version, at least. Like in the original MGM movie, they did go, oh, it was all just a dream.
Yeah.
Whereas in this version, it's not a direct sequel in the sense that they have changed certain things, but there's also a lot of direct references. So it's a bit of a weird hybrid that way.
Yeah. And yeah, I'm trying to remember how I thought of it as a child, like what, but all I can remember are the wheelies or the wheelers. That's all I can think of. And even before like there's sometimes when you see a film and you forget about it as an adult, but there's like one thing that you're like, oh, there was a film that had, and that's what the wheelers are for me.
Yeah. I remember this quite a bit. I watched it a lot when I was younger. I obviously loved it. I think I used to rent it out from the local Extravision. Or maybe I'd recorded it off the telly. I can't remember. And there was so a lot of it I did remember. I was very fond of TikTok when I was younger. Yeah. Big TikTok fan. The robot, not the app. But I'd completely forgotten about Jack.
Yeah.
Who Tim Burton has said was a direct inspiration for Jack the Pumpkin King.
Yeah.
Which I did find very amusing because it's like Jack mommy issues Pumpkinhead. Jesus Christ, dude. And like the Gump. I remembered the thing where she goes around to the final sort of showdown between her and the Gnome King in the Hall of Ornaments. I remembered that really well because I think I had a few like JD things when I was a kid and I used to like pretend. So everybody saw this way too young if that was what I was doing. But yeah, because it's visually so striking that I think whether it's the Wheelers or Mombi or something else, there's always going to be something about this film sticks in people's heads because they, even if they couldn't tell you what the plot was, they'd be like, oh yeah, that film scared the shit out of me.
And even like when you think about the so they have this moose head,
the Gump.
And even though he's meant to be like the good guy, and it's still fucking terrifying. This like, it reminds me. Do you remember there was an ad for, was it wine gums, and it was the talking moose head? That terrified me as a child.
I do remember that.
Yes, yeah. And Gump fucking no. Anytime I'm like, ooh.
I did see someone. I was looking at like the trivia on IMDb, and someone was like, the Gump is a type of like elk or whatever that lives in the forests of Oz. Therefore, it is a forest Gump. I nearly threw my phone across the room. I was like, I hate you, whoever you are.
Nice. So obviously, it's a really kind of like horrific film. But do you think you would show it to a child?
I think maybe like a 10-year-old.
Okay.
I'm not sure I'd go much younger than that. Obviously, again, depends on the kid.
Yeah.
And their own like tastes and what they're like used to, I suppose. But like, yeah, the electroshock therapy, the Wheelers, the scene where she is stealing something from Mombi. Mm-hmm. And she has to run down this hall with 31 dismembered heads screaming at her. Like, it's pretty scary, I think.
Yes.
So, yeah, some kids, not all kids. Is that an okay caveat to put on it?
And do you think this is one of those films that was meant for adults, but they had to market it to kids because it was done by Disney?
No, I don't. I do think it was meant for kids.
Okay.
But maybe not little kids, because it is like the original MGM Wizard of Oz has its very dark bits, but it's a much lighter movie overall. This is very unforgiving up until pretty much the end.
Yeah.
Like, it's quite dark throughout. But it is still, I think, clearly a kids movie. Like some of the jokes, Belina, that fucking chicken. You know, if ever there was a character meant to entertain children, it's, you know, the same with Jack Pumpkinhead and the Gump to a certain point. So all of her friends, really. So I do think it was for kids, but I think they really underestimated like the combination of quite a serious plot line, for lack of a better phrase, and some essentially very good visual design combined for a very scary film.
Yeah, absolutely. With this film in mind, do you think, obviously this came out mid-80s, do you think that films for kids are a lot more watered down nowadays?
I want to say yes, but honestly, it's hard to tell because obviously when I watch a lot of kids movies. I love animation in general. But particularly when you're watching stuff like this, it's like it's never going to hit me the way it would a kid.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, I loved came out probably 10 years ago now, and I think it was like yesterday, Paranorman. I thought was a great movie, which is obviously about like zombies, and there's some very scary bits in that for kids, but I didn't feel any of the same sense of like, oh my god, that's gonna fucked up in the way I did with this. But I don't know, it's hard to tell if that's hangover from my feeling of seeing it as a child. I think maybe, but hard to tell.
I always think that like the movies from our childhoods were a lot darker than they are now, apart from stuff that is like Paranorman, Frankenweenie, that kind of stuff. And obviously the film that I'm going to talk about. But yeah, I just even watching like Nate's films and, you know, the films that are coming out, and even you know what's kind of coming out in Disney. I mean, it still deals with a lot of, you know, death, real life kind of things, but it seems to be a lot more matter of fact, whereas I think when we were younger it was a lot more kind of fantastical, which made it a bit more scarier.
Yeah, or they would just like brush it aside, because just listening to you say that, what came to mind actually was the Goonies, which I saw a couple of years back. They were doing like a special screening in the cinema, and I went to see it. And we were watching it like, Jesus fucking Christ, this is pretty intense for a kids movie. We didn't remember any of that stuff. Because like you remember them like all running around the caves and pirate skeletons, but you don't remember the mobsters that absolutely legit try and kill them. And there's like a body in the freezer. And it's just not, but it's not treated like anything serious. Whereas I think today they wouldn't just throw it in with that lack of thought, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is interesting. I don't know if that's good or bad, honestly.
So would you recommend Return to Oz to horror fans then?
I would. I think the creature design and the puppetry is really impressive. And if you like that kind of stuff, and it got awful reviews, but rewatching it last night, I actually really enjoyed it.
Yes. Yeah. Like, apparently it did really badly in America, but everywhere else it actually did.
It did well. Oh, okay. That's interesting to know. Yeah. Well, apparently it really got thrown under the bus marketing wise and stuff, which is a real shame. But yeah, like I genuinely enjoyed it, and like like it is a Wizard of Oz or an Oz movie. Like it is very kiddie in its plotting, but it's enjoyable. It's well made. Yeah, there's some real cool character designs. I mean, it's only an hour and a half long.
Yeah, and plus I think Fairuza Balk in her first like big screen role, I think she's really good for like a 10-year-old kid. Like
she is. I mean, it's very easy for child actors to come across as incredibly annoying.
Yeah.
And she manages to skate around that really well.
Yeah. And it's kind of like leading on to her more well-known role of The Craft.
Yes, indeed.
More witches.
Yeah, I can't remember. I think it was when they were in the office at the beginning, when she's like first seeing the doctor, and she's talking about like I love that bit that's not in the original Wizard of Oz, but I think it's in the books, when she's talking about how the Tin Man became the Tin Man. You're like, whoa.
Yes.
We need to have a chat about this whole hacking bits of yourself off until you're all made of tin.
And she's so matter-of-factly about it. She's like, yeah, and then he hacked off his hand and it became tin. And you're like...
Yeah, it was really funny. But yeah, we were watching that scene, and just as she was leaving, my partner just turned to me and was like, "We are the weirdos, mister." Yeah, get
out. So let's move on to your film.
My film.
Your film.
Because it's the only one we've both definitely watched.
Yes.
So the other film that we are going to be talking about today is the 1993 American fantasy comedy Hocus Pocus, also made by Walt Disney.
Yes.
So it was directed by Kenny Ortega, screenplay by Mark Garris and Neil Cuthbert. And it starred, obviously, Bette Midler, Sarah Jessica Parker, Kathy Najimy, Omri Katz, Thora Birch, and Vanessa Shaw. So the story is you get this if you don't know.
Yeah, as if we need to tell you.
If we needed to tell you. It opens in the 1600s with the Sanderson sisters, who are witches. They are trying to suck the life out of all the children. And Thackeray Binks attempts to save his sister Emily. He does a very poor job of it and gets turned into a cat. Several hundred years later, we see Max Dennison, who has moved to the town of Salem with his younger sister Danny, and is the new kid in school. So he meets oh god, what's her name? I've lost it. The girl. He meets the girl. Allison. There we go. He meets Allison in class, has a crush on her. And then that night is Halloween night. And he lights the black flame candle. But little does he know, if you're a virgin and you light the black flame candle, the Sanderson sisters will come back to life. And they do. Hijinks ensue. There's a cat. There's a zombie. Good times are had by all.
There's a musical number.
There's a musical
Why didn't we cover this for our musical? No. I love Hocus Pocus. I've always loved Hocus Pocus. And, you know, as a child, you're meant to kind of root for the goodies. I always loved the witches more than I loved the goodies.
It's because they're so funny.
Yeah.
They're so funny. Like, you just want to, like, I would have happily just watched an entire film of them wandering around 20th century Salem. Being vaguely confused.
Yes.
And having fun. It's just, and clearly the three lead actresses are having a ball.
Yeah.
Like, they are having fun with it.
Yeah.
And again, this is another movie that got bad reviews on its release, and has become a cult classic. Obviously. I think it's one of those movies for our generation. I think because it came out sort of exactly when a lot of us were like. I mean, I think you're a year or two younger and or older than I am.
I was born in 1989.
1989. So you're 2 years younger than I am. So you would have been 4. I would have been 7, 5, 6. I don't do maths on good days. Okay. And I suppose when you talk about horror influenced films that you can show to kids, this is perfect. It's not really that scary. Like, there's nothing scary about this.
Yeah.
It is fun and funny with horror elements.
Yeah.
Like, people are hung on screen. Children are killed.
Yes.
There is a zombie. Yeah. A cat is run over multiple times.
The thing I love about Hocus Pocus is the Sanderson sisters are satanic witches. They worship the Dark Lord. They do, like, very dark magic. And I just loved how...
no messing.
I just loved how there was, like, this satanic witches doing satanic rituals in a Disney film.
Yeah.
And it's like, when I did, like, the witch episode of the podcast, and I was, like, looking at witches on film, blah, 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 and they were like, oh, Hocus Pocus is the most, like, realistic when it comes to, like, satanic witches. And
that's hilarious.
Like, get the fuck out of here.
That is fabulous.
I just love it. I love it how dark Disney goes, and everyone goes, oh, it's Disney, so it's good, it's light, and it's fun, and you're like, this is satanic. It's satanic, but it's satanic.
Well, I think it kind of like it sort of is the same as what I was saying about the Goonies, in that they just sort of threw it in just because I don't think that would happen today.
Absolutely not.
I think especially for the age group that it is marketed at,
Mm-hmm.
I do not think that would happen today. I think there would still be witches, but there would be no mention of virgins or Satan or any of that.
Yeah. And I just love how they put like a comedic spin on it. Like when they go to the party and there's the guy dressed as the devil.
Yeah. And he just brings them into his house and his wife is like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah. And it's just comedic gold. Like
it really is. And I don't know someone, I think I don't know anyone who can't at least do one, like, quote one line from this movie.
Exactly. And like, especially coming from the burlesque scene and the cabaret scene, like you yourself do a Hocus Pocus number.
I do.
And it's just so popular at Halloween because it's just so nostalgic for us.
Yeah. It has been an issue at the Halloween bonbon room in the past where like Miss Fortune who runs that show, we always open that show with I Put a Spell on You. The three of us and I sing it and then the girls are the other characters and it's a bit of fun. It's 2 minutes long. It's a nice opener and it sets a good fun tone for the evening. And every year she has to email about 5 people and go, this number is already being done. You're going to have to choose something else.
Oh my gosh. It's just, and it seems to have had a real revival recently. Why do you think that is?
I think it is again, like, I know a lot of that sort of those 90s kind of comedies are having a bit of a revival. I don't know. I think people are going back to it and going, well, it actually is just very funny. It's good fun. It's not problematic.
Yes.
It's a non-problematic fave from the 90s and you can just like enjoy it.
Yeah.
You don't have to feel bad about it. You don't have to go, look, I still love it, but I know this is bad. None of that.
Yeah, because there is always that fear when you go back and watch films, even as early as like the 2000s, you go back and watch it and you're like, oh my God, this has not aged well. Oh God, this is awful. The language used. Oh my God. But Hocus Pocus is still so pure.
It is. It's enjoyable. It's nostalgic in a good way. Like it's still funny enough that you can laugh at it as an adult. There's a sing-along, again, 1.5 hours long, the perfect length. So it's not going to take up too much of your time.
Yeah.
It's an easy Halloween costume.
It really is, yeah. And who doesn't want to be Bette Midler?
No.
Yeah.
I really want to pin up bound this. I would love to get, we just need a blonde.
Yeah. Well, sure, Miss Fortune's blonde, or she was blonde.
Not anymore.
Oh no, she's out.
Yeah, she's not in the group anymore. You can't be a Sanderson sister anymore.
So let's talk about the horror elements. One of my favorites is the zombie, as we've mentioned. Billy.
Yeah, played by a legend, Doug Jones.
Yes, of course. I just love how silly it is. Like it is, if you look at it, he is quite horrific, as Doug Jones does. The makeup's great. His mouth is sewn shut because his tongue has been cut out. Like it's really nasty stuff. But it's just so funny and so silly.
It is, yeah. No, when he's still got his mouth sewn shut and Bette Midler is like, go and find them. And he's like, meh. And he's so good at that physical stuff. Obviously, it's what he's known for. Or the bit where they cut his mouth open and he's like, and all these old leaves.
The moths come out.
which is such a stupid, fun little detail. That's pretty... his design, the makeup is excellent. He's a proper zombie. I mean, there's no way a body from the 1600s would have that much flesh left on his bones, but I'm gonna get technical about it.
Yeah, it's magic.
Yeah, I think the proper child murdering is quite scary as well. I mean, it's a proper horror element. You do see several kids, or at least one kid, get killed essentially on screen.
Yeah. And then
it's not a gory death. No,
but it's very much kind of implied. But it's so strange because so we talked about with Return to Oz about things that you just didn't understand. But even with Hocus Pocus, there was I didn't really understand the hanging when I was a kid. I knew what it was, but it wasn't fully oh, I understand what this is. And then also with the whole virgin thing, I didn't know what the hell a virgin was. I was like, yeah, virgin.
Sure, black flame candle. Yeah, got it.
But I kind of like the fact that you can go back as an adult and you can watch it with your kids. Like, I'd sit down and watch it. I think we did watch it with Nate last Halloween. And he can still have fun because there's still a lot of slapstick in it and there's still a lot of funniness. And then I can enjoy it because there's some adult humor in it as well.
Yeah. One of my favorite moments in it is when the three witches, they get burned in the kiln.
Yeah.
But there's French tape in it, and so when they survive, it's fine. And they come out speaking French, which is just, I think is just so funny. But one of the other, I think, proper horror elements to it is, I am going to have to get back from my mic because I have to do it. Book. The book is actually really scary.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's made out of human skin.
Made out of human skin, has an eye, a fully functioning eye.
Yeah, I mean, that's stuff you find in, like, the Necronomicon.
Yeah.
From the Evil Dead, like.
Yeah, no, it's a proper, very spooky element to it. I think that's what, like, Hocus Pocus is not horrifying, but it's very spooky.
Yeah.
While being incredibly fun at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't know. I know it's not for everyone, but for my money, you can't go wrong.
Absolutely not. And I'd recommend it to kids and adults.
Yeah.
It's great for just, like, I know my older sister, actually, she has every October, I think it's October the 1st, she puts it on. That's her, like, #1 Halloween film that she will put on.
Yeah, it's definitely one of mine as well. I try to get it in every year if I can. If I'm allowed.
I was gonna say, what, you're too busy to watch it?
I know. Well, sometimes I have it on the background and stuff, but I do like to sit down and watch it. But I know other people are not maybe quite as enthusiastic to watch Hocus Pocus every fucking year as I am.
Oh well.
Well.
So let's chat about some also rans when it comes to children's horror, and I feel like I should probably touch along on Coraline.
Yes, of course, because I'm very sorry that we didn't get to talk about it, because it is a great movie, and I must watch it again. But it has just been so long that I certainly wouldn't be able to meaningfully contribute to the conversation.
I actually hadn't seen this before, so maybe it was a good thing that I got all mixed up, and then because I'd seen, like, the opening scenes and then just been a bit like meh. But no, I actually sat down and watched it. So it is a 2009 American stop motion animated dark fantasy horror film, written and directed by Henry Selick, and it is based on Neil Gaiman's novella of the same name.
Yeah.
It stars Dakota Fanning, Terry Hatcher, Jennifer Saunders, Dawn French, and Ian McShane. And it is based on this little girl called Coraline who moves to a new place, new house, and she finds a door, a little small door, and one of the nights she goes through it and she finds another version of her parents. Her real version of the parents, they're a bit neglectful. They kind of ignore her a lot, and even though she's gone through this massive thing, like, moving house is a big thing for a kid, but they're very, like, they push her off a lot and kind of ignore her a lot. So she becomes frustrated. Anyway, she comes across this new parents who are great. They cook food for her and they're fun, and the whole world is, like, kind of turned upside down, but it's a lot more fun, a lot more fantastical. But then she realizes that things aren't what they seem, and there are ghost children, and she must sew buttons into her eyes, and the new mother is going to keep her eyes, and it gets a bit weird from there.
Yeah, well, Neil Gaiman. Neil Gaiman for kids as well.
Yeah. Although, like, I'm like, is it a kids film? Like, I know obviously it's along the same vein as kind of, like, you know, Nightmare Before Christmas, or obviously because it's got the stop animation vein to it.
And you could kind of argue that it's an almost sort of very dark Alice in Wonderland kind of vibe as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I really enjoyed the film. It is fucked up.
Absolutely. I mean, the fact that the other mother, when she becomes her actual monstrous self, she is actually made up of sewing needles. Her hands are sewing needles. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, it's pretty freaky.
Like, I've had those dreams where I've got like sewing needles beneath my skin and I'm trying to like get the pins and needles out. And so I think the whole button thing just really creeps me out.
That really doesn't bother me. I'm one of those weird people who likes to put needles just like, under the top layer of skin.
You fucking
and like
freak.
I know, right?
Oh, you weirdo.
Yeah, I am.
Especially because the podcast I was listening to when I was going through my migraine was about Albert Fish, the serial killer. So that's just creeped me out a little bit more.
Sorry. Well, I'm glad you got to watch it anyway. Like, did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah. I thought it was a bit of a slow mover. I was a bit like, come on, but that's just me. I have like this awful ADHD mind where I'm like, come on.
That's Gaiman though as well. Like sometimes his stuff is a bit slow to get going.
Yeah, but I enjoyed the look of it. I really enjoyed the stop animation. I thought that was amazing. And stop animation always, like, it always amazes me when I'm watching it, because I'm like, the intricate movements they have to do and then like intricately move it like another way, and I'm just like, how? I would not have the patience for that.
Yeah, I still have a big art coffee table book somewhere. It's like the art, like how it was made of Nightmare Before Christmas, and it's just fascinating to me. Like the scale of the sets, and how some of them had to be like Oogie Boogie was massive.
Yeah.
Because of how he had to be moved, and then like they had this like box full of like 8,000 jackheads with like every different possible permutation of his face, and like it is such an incredible art form, and that takes such dedication because it takes so long.
Right.
I can completely understand why animators would be like, fuck this, computers, man. We can do this in like a year and not 7.
Oh my God.
The dedication that these people have to their art is really astonishing, and it's so well done.
Yeah. It's stunning. It's so beautiful. Like, there's bits where she goes out in the garden and the garden's made up of like dragon snaps and, you know, all these wildflowers, and it's absolutely stunning. And it looks like it was done on a computer. And I'm sure some of it was kind of edited, but it's just stunning.
Yeah, it's really come on though as well. I mean, even if you look at Nightmare Before Christmas versus Corpse Bride, and it's so smooth. And I don't know whether they're filling in frames digitally. Or I don't know what it is. And like, I'm super old school. I like one of the reasons I love Return to Oz is because it's like nothing but practical effects. There's like 2 or 3 instances of green screen, and everything else is either stop motion or practical effects. And so I prefer the slightly jaggedy movements of the older stop motion. But that being said, like they've like the improvements to the field are just incredible.
Yeah. And just like all the other films we've talked about, like Coraline, I mean, I could see a kid sitting down and watching it and being like, oh yeah, you know, it's like a fairy tale kind of. But then if you watch as an adult, you're like, that's horrific. She like takes these children's eyes and sews buttons into their sockets, and it is really, really horrible. And like, even when you look at the more like the human side of it, her parents are really neglectful and they're really terrible parents.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's kids' films through and through. It's like, show me a Disney film with a happy family at the start, you know?
Yeah.
It's not what Disney deals in. Or any of these things, really.
Yeah, that's true. So what about you? Do you have any other children's horror suggestions?
I did Google it because I was just to jog my memory, and there's a couple here, but some of the stuff that the Google throws up is really funny, like Monsters Inc. One that it's probably not strictly a horror film, but it certainly has horrific elements, and I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's a Don Bluth film from the 80s called The Secret of Nim.
No.
It's an animation. It's about a mouse, basically, and she's just trying to get by, and her kid is sick. But there are rats, and also the farm is being like torn up by developers. It is so scary. Yeah. It's so scary. It's also beautiful. It's such a striking film. Like, I love Don Bluth animation, even though they made Troll in Central Park. Not their fault. Like, it was, the only thing that could go up against Disney for a short period of time, and he did some amazing work, particularly in the 80s and the early 90s. And that I think is really one of his best ones. Dark Crystal, I think, would be another.
Someone else on Twitter, because I put it up on Twitter asking people what their childhood trauma films were. Someone said Labyrinth, which is kind of...
I was going to bring up Labyrinth because, again, not a horror movie, but definitely scary bits.
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know. There's nothing about David Bowie that can ever be scary to me.
Although I think it's
me from my cradle anytime. No, wait, that's awful.
Codpiece was slightly scary, but
well, no, I mean, I think there was a Jim Henson exhibition when I was very young, so it would have been like 1990 or something.
Yeah.
And I have no memory of this, but apparently I was taken to it. But the Ludo puppet was there.
Yeah.
Like the big suit, because he was obviously to scale.
Yeah.
And apparently I took one look at this thing and ran in the opposite direction. But then it became one of my, like, that is still one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah.
Like, I'm one of those people. I love Labyrinth.
Yeah. And how do you feel about kind of out and out horror that is marketed towards children, like stuff like the Goosebumps books that were then obviously like the TV show? And do you remember Are You Afraid of the Dark?
I loved Are You Afraid of the Dark? That was one of my favorites, and I had a stack of Goosebumps and Point Horror when I got a bit older. I loved the old Point Horror ones as well.
Yeah.
I don't mind it. I thought like they were great. Like, you know, they really helped me develop, like, I mean, those things, they help you develop your own sense of taste and style. And it's like, if that's not there, then how is a kid supposed to know if that's what they're into, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I owe so much to Goosebumps. I really do. I was obsessed. I had Goosebumps everything. And do you remember you could get the collectible books and it had like the gel inserts in it, so it looked like green slime?
I do remember those. I never had any of those, but my favorite ones were I had a couple of the Choose Your Own Adventure Goosebumps.
Oh yeah.
Died every time. Died every time. I was like, do you ever survive? Spoilers, no.
I always remember the puppet one. That always freaked me out.
Puppet one.
Yeah.
The first one that I had, and I don't know why it stuck with me. I don't even know if it was the first one, but one that just really stuck with me was like this story about a mutant sponge from under the sink.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that one? Oh, that was a good one. It was just, I think it was just so weird.
Yeah.
It was just so weird. I was like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah, but there was some really scary ones. Like, do you remember when, like, the camera that took your soul?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, that's terrifying.
Yeah, and Are You Afraid of the Dark was legit terrifying.
Yeah.
Like, there was a couple of those that really, really scared me.
Yeah, there was a leprechaun one that got to me.
There was a leprechaun one.
Yeah, I was like, ooh.
But that intro was just so iconic. It's like, welcome to a meeting of the Midnight Society. And you're like, oh, yes.
I'm going to have to go on YouTube and see if I can find any of them.
Yeah, definitely. I think all of that stuff is really important. Like, kids should have access to as many genres as possible. I mean, obviously, as you say, age appropriate, but like, you know, how are they supposed to become tiny humans if they don't have access to the same variety of things that we do?
Exactly. And that's what I plan to do with Nate.
Yeah. But there's a question, actually. Okay. Of all of the things that we have discussed, is there anything that you would show to Nate?
Out of, like, the kids?
Yeah.
Well, like, he's already seen, like, Nightmare Before Christmas. He's already seen Hocus Pocus. I'm not sure he's quite old enough yet for Coraline or Return to Us, but I think it's not so much, he'd find it really scary. He just wouldn't be interested.
Yeah, it's just not, he's not there yet. Yeah, that's fair enough.
So I think I can see it being like perhaps at 6, I think is the ideal age to be like, because then they start understanding things and, you know. So yeah, I think 6 is my goal.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. I might not show him The Exorcist just yet. I might save that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know what? And I think I might, when he's like 8 or something, I might start off with the Universals.
Yeah, I mean, those are really good ones, I think, because none of them are that scary, particularly in modern day context.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, and then we'll move on to Saw and Hostel. Oh god, dear, oh dear. Yeah, I don't know. Do you think, like,
based on the things that he likes right now, do you have any like expectations of something that he might be into when he's older? Do you think like will he be like a gore guy or?
I don't know. I think he might be oh god, I hate to say it, but I think he might be an Aliens, a science fiction guy, because he's very into his space.
Nothing wrong with that.
See, I'm not a big fan.
Alien is still one of my favorite Haunted House movies, though.
See, I appreciate Alien for that, but I'm just not a big fan of like space science. I like human science fiction, like The Fly or
right, yeah,
Reanimator, stuff like that, even like Frankenstein. But I'm not a big fan of outer space.
You're not a Star Trek girl.
But the thing was, I am a Star Trek girl. I'm a Star Wars girl. But when it comes to horror, I'm like,
right, yeah.
Meh. I mean, The Thing, perhaps, but that's because of like the special effects and the body horror more than there's a weird alien out there.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Oh yeah, nothing wrong with being a sci-fi guy. I'll give you some interesting dinner table conversations when he's a bit older.
Exactly, yeah. I'll introduce him to like The Blob and
yeah. You'd be like, no, Mom, you just don't get it. Aliens is a masterpiece.
How did I know? So thank you very much for coming on and talking about childhood horror.
Thank you so much for having me. It's absolutely a delight. Always happy to have an excuse to rewatch things like Hocus Pocus or Return to Oz or Coraline.
So that was my chat there with Ruby Noir about childhood horror. And in particular, we discuss Return to Oz, Hocus Pocus, and Coraline. So I want to know, what was your childhood horror gateway? Was there a particular film that absolutely scarred you for life and you still can't even watch it because you get that freaked out by it? Let us know on our social media. So that is on Instagram or Facebook at What a Scream Podcast, or over on Twitter, what_scream. We also have a Patreon if you'd like to check that out and show your support there. There are different tiers and levels of support budgets there. Depending on which one you go to, there are goodies and extras and all that fun stuff for you to grab. So yes, as always, I hope you are staying well, and more importantly, I hope you are staying horrific. Goodbye.
Shouldn't be scared of the Dracula. Shouldn't be scared of the mummy. Shouldn't be scared of Frankenstein's monster. You should be scared.